Welcome to Lecture 10 of the lecture series, Psychology of Well-Being. And we are going to talk about, in this lecture, various interventions for fostering subjective well-being. And this is going to be part one of that particular couple of lectures that we have on interventions for fostering subjective well-being. So what are all the inputs that we are going to have from this particular lecture? Well, we are going to recapitulate the nature of subjective well-being first. Then we are going to go into the idea of intervention to foster subjective well-being. Well, that includes enhancing growth-inducing or positive experiences with the help of which we can enhance subjective well-being or induce further greater experience of subjective well-being. And this idea of intervention also revolves around the fact that these are interventions for a common person, and not only for people with severe or mild illnesses or psychological disorders. So these are for common persons, any other human being, any common human being. And then we are going to get into the 7 well-researched growth-inducing such experiences, which comprise, which are included as the growth-inducing positive experiences. So these 7 would be talked about, and then we'll also see that there is something called well-researched areas of such interventions. So we're going to learn that what are these interventions, and one important thing that we tend to include in the study of interventions is that we see that it should be well-researched area, and we are going to find out that what do we really mean by the well-researched area. We are also going to see that well-researched also means that we have evidence-based or experimental studies to understand the impact of such interventions. And if we have such experiments or such scientific study conducted to study the impact of such interventions, we call them to be well-researched areas of intervention. So we are going to get into that, those details also. And then we'll focus on 3 of the 7 well-researched growth-inducing experiences as intervention, as the medium of intervention to foster subjective well-being. And these areas would be meaning, gratitude, and strength. So let's get on with recapitulating the nature of subjective well-being. We have already seen that subjective evaluation of one's own life in terms of having positive emotions, low negative emotions, and satisfaction in life overall and in various domains. So that is the composition of, or that is the structure of subjective well-being. So if we have subjective evaluations of our own life in terms of these 3 elements, to be positive, to be substantial in terms of greater positive emotions, lower negative emotions, and greater satisfaction in life, we find that we have better subjective well-being as per Ed Diner. Well, we find that both internal and external factors may influence our such subjective experiences. It could be internal, physical health, personality traits, and also external, work life, access to material resources, relationships, etc. We also saw that there are limitations, but today we are not going to go into the limitations. We are going to see that how these can be further enhanced, because these augur well for any human life to have subjective well-being. So, still, limitations we had seen earlier that if the conditions are adverse for people or difficult life conditions, subjective well being doesn't talk much about, doesn't tell us much about how to build a more just society, as it emphasizes on good society, leading to subjective well being. We also saw that this entire concept of subjective well-being is based on hedonic view of well-being that focuses on pleasure and happiness. Having said that, it becomes important to look into uh, the ways in which subjective well-being can be enhanced, and for that there are interventions. And let's look into the very nature or the very idea of such an intervention. Well, the first one, um, in fact, it becomes important for us to learn that enhancing growth inducing or positive experiences, such as the following seven ones, as reviewed by Stone and Parks in 2018 from a famous handbook of well being that has been published by the NOBA publishers. Um, we find that these seven growth inducing or positive experiences that are focused in the interventions, because if these are enhanced, we find that if these are introduced in the lives of people or these are fostered in the lives of people, subjective well-being would increase. There would be more happiness, less of negative emotions, and better satisfaction in life. So what are these seven growth inducing or positive experiences? The first one is meaning or ideas about purposeful existence or life. Gratitude, acknowledging and appreciating others helpful behaviors. Strength, which is to engage with life using one's strengths rather than weaknesses. Savoring, which is engaging with forgotten memories or experiences. Optimism, working towards having a better or positive future. Empathy, being able to connect with another person's thoughts or feelings. Kindness, helping others that may enhance positive feeling in the helper. We find that these interventions are for a common person and not only for severe or mild illnesses amongst people. Well, we'll take up meaning, gratitude, and strength as a medium of intervention or the content of intervention, because if these important positive experiences, if these are introduced, we may find that there is a greater likelihood of increase in subjective well-being. So we are going to focus on these three: meaning, gratitude, and strength as such positive experiences. The rest of the four will be taken up in the next lecture. Let's begin with meaning of well-researched domains of intervention before we go into the different three types of interventions um, that we have just noticed out of the seven positive or growth-inducing experiences. Well, the meaning of well-researched domains of intervention for fostering well-being have the following processes. There is one typographical error there. I beg your pardon for that. The word following is repeatedly given there. Okay, so what are these processes? Taking well-being as the target or dependent variable. Intervention programs based on growth-inducing or positive experiences, such as the seven ones mentioned in previous slide. That is, independent variable must have significant impact on the individual's well-being. So intervention programs are actually taken to be the independent variable and well-being is taken to be the dependent variable. And we find that generally the experimental method is utilized for such intervention studies or to study the impact of those intervention programs. Evidence-based research is done to see the impact of these programs on dependent variable, which is subjective well-being. So let's begin with the interventions based on meaning. Well, we have already noticed that having meaning or a sense of purposeful existence has been studied using two different ways. And let's see the first one, that is having a purpose as the first way of having first way of having, or one of the ways of having a sense of purposeful existence. So having a purpose, that is following one's aspirations or engaging with important aspects of life goals such as care for parents or children, career goals, etc. And the second way to study meaning or purposeful existence is having, whether or not the person is having a sense of coherence, that is overarching goal in life. So where having a purpose was related to important goals or aspirations, here we find that having coherence would mean having overarching goal in life. There is some evidence about how uh, when the overarching goals are spiritual, such as following one's own calling or some kind of intuition regarding very, very highly growth inducing experience, or other would say that experience of growth in itself, rather than having materialistic goals, it also enhances well being reflected in one's work life or achievements. So rather than having a focus just on the material goals like one's status or one's salary or the money that earns, obviously these are important, but if these are just the end in themselves, then it might not induce subjective well-being in as greater manner as we find when the person is motivated more by the spiritual sort of goals, including calling or intuition uh, regarding the experience of very um, sort of heightened experience of self growth. Let's take one example. Well, Bassi and its and colleagues studied high and low achieving insurance companies, comparing the life satisfaction, well-being, and job meaning of their employees. Well, they found that with the help of their study, there was no difference in the two companies in terms of job meaning or purpose one assigns to one's job. But the employees of the high achieving company reported relatively better meaning, life satisfaction, environmental mastery, and autonomy. Well, if we could see that uh, rather than just the job meaning, what really matters is meaning, broader life satisfaction, environmental mastery, and autonomy rather than just the job related concerns, we find that the insurance company, did far, far better in terms of its high performance. From there, we move on to types of intervention. We have got two different types of intervention as far as meaning or meaning focused intervention is concerned. The first one is goal setting or scheduling one's goal with rationale in everyday life. And B, reflecting, that is engaging with the questions of overarching goals in life. Well, with these interventions, we find that generally subjective well being has increased, but there are some questions for future research too. First one, distressed when not able to meet the overarching goals. If that is the condition, that people become distressed when not being able to um, achieve the overarching or spiritual goals, then how we take up the question of enhancing subjective well-being. So that has to be studied probably with the help of more experiential or qualitative research inputs besides the experimental studies. Now, do these interventions last long? Are there long-lasting impacts of these meaning-focused interventions? That also has to be studied with the help of further studies. And how about the gender differences? in terms of how do males and females perform as far as the impact of meaning focused or having a purposeful existence focused interventions are concerned. We move on to the second intervention that is based on the experience of gratitude. And there are two major theories of gratitude that we got to take into account. The first one is reciprocal altruism theory, and the second one is find, bind, and remind theory. Let's take up the first for reciprocal altruism theory. It is based on give and take in any relationship. One engages in expressing gratitude to reduce, I beg your pardon, there is one typographical error here. It should be in expressing gratitude to reduce, not reduced, the other person's feelings of giving more and taking less or being cheated. So let me repeat, one engages in expressing gratitude to reduce the other person's feeling of giving more but taking less or being cheated. So we tend to minimize that feelings of others being cheated in that give and take relationship by expressing or by compensating with the help of um, expressing our gratitude. That's the theory by Trivers in 1971. What is the latest theory? Or another way to look at gratitude and enhancing that is find, bind, and remind theory. That is all about expressing or feeling gratitude towards any kind person rather than managing cost benefit within established relationships. So that is the latest theory, which says that gratitude may not necessarily be associated only with the established relationship where we find give and take relationship is present, but it could be there for any person, any kind person about whom we may have a sense of gratitude. Well, there are interventions like gratitude letter exercise, where the person writes to another person that one feels grateful towards. So if I feel grateful towards another person, I write a letter to him or her, and its impact on well-being is seen within 10 minutes of this exercise. So that is something which is remarkable as far as the experimental findings on the impact of gratitude focused intervention on subjective well-being is concerned. Another intervention is three good things activity that tells us that um, what are the three good things that have happened to a person. So the three things that has happened to me as a person that I've got to write in the three good things exercise or activity. So effects of this intervention on well-being in 2 weeks can be observed if this activity is done daily. That's another remarkable findings in terms of the intervention based on gratitude. Well, some questions are still there to be pursued, and which is relationship between gratitude and a social support. So whether it is gratitude emerges because of the presence of social support, or um, it is the sense of gratitude that we show towards other that provides us or that initiates a greater social support for us. So if I express gratitude, I happen to gather more solidarity um, or better relationship, better support with other people, relationship with other people, and support from other people. So that is one thing that has to be explored further, and also that how does gender dynamics, whether males or females, their subjective well-being becomes better with the help of gratitude focused interventions. Well, finally, in this lecture, we move towards the interventions based on strength. Well, types of strength. Let us recall that strength was all about one's tendency to focus on one's better, more enabling qualities rather than the weaknesses. And these strong or these strengths can be of two types. One is character strength or positive traits, and the other one is talent or aptitude and skills. So, in character, we may have certain positive traits like creativity, leadership, honesty, etc. And talent could be any aptitude or skills like being a sportsman, being a scientist, um, and also other kinds of talents that may actually provides a person a good sense of self-worth or confidence. Okay, so interventions are based on creating awareness about the strengths. That is the first one, and then also using strengths as in a novel manner. So more caring persons um, are motivated to go towards service, providing service as counselors, and leaders are motivated to go towards organizing meaningful student events. Well, it's important to note that the strengths are used rather than only recognized by the person. So I should not just be recognizing my strength, but I also should be using those strengths in terms of character strength or talent strengths. And that is something that could be the key for well being as far as the intervention program and its findings are, its impact are concerned. Well, we also note that there is a need to guard against the following unfounded beliefs or risky actions as far as exercising or taking care of making use of one's strength is concerned. So there can be some risks also involved. What are these? Strengths being stagnant. If we believe that our strengths are stagnant, it may lead to passive approach to challenges in life. So we have got to see that strengths can generally be enhanced further, increased further as we grow in life. We got to work towards that. If we feel that these strengths are stagnant, we might feel that no, not much can be done in the given circumstances. Then inappropriate use of strengths, for example, being adventurous could be good, but if it happens in an uncritical manner, it may lead to very harmful addictions, including drug abuse or gaming addictions that we are familiar with. Well, some questions are still there to be pursued, which are assessment for whose perspective. Do we take into account the facilitator's perspective in enhancing person's strength, or we try to understand the strengths and its impact on well-being, or evaluating strength from the point of view of the needy person or the client? So that's the question that we need to explore further as far as intervention based on strength is concerned. So we saw in this lecture that how different intervention programs based on growth inducing experiences like meaning, gratitude, and strengths can actually enhance subjective well being of people. In the next lecture, we are going to see some more, or rather, four more uh, different types of intervention programs to foster subjective well being. Thank you very much.